Hello and welcome. Chris from Missouri here, bringing you another video about vintage baseball cards. In this video, I'm going to show you some cards, but you guys, this is Thursday. And you guys that watch my channel know that Thursday, I do this little bit called Just a Bit Outside, where I show rookie cards of players that their rookie cards are before 1980 that are not quite in the Hall of Fame. They're just a bit outside. And we're not coming down to the end of this, even though we've shown about 50 cards and talked about them so far. But we are going to try to maybe do something different here. But today, I'm going to show you three cards, and I think I'm going to show you three kind of forgotten players that maybe if they were on your team growing up, you still remember them, but they just don't get brought up into my mind very often right now. But this is kind of special for me today because today, this Thursday, right now as I'm talking to you, it's getting ready to be first pitch for opening day. And I am so excited about baseball, so excited about this season coming up. And it's kind of cool. Opening day is awful cool for a lot of people because it's like you start out from scratch. What you did last year doesn't matter. What everybody starts out at the same spot, and it just kind of gives you a renewal of hope. And I just love this time of year with March Madness going on and the start of baseball. But today, I'm showing you three cards. And I'm pretty excited about these three cards because, like I say, I've talked about most of these players before. Maybe even talking about, while I was talking about other cards that I've shown, I've maybe said something about these players. But first of all, I'm going to show you a player that's right now, he's just a bit outside the Hall of Fame. And that is none other than Rick Reuschel. Now, Rick Reuschel, I'm a fan of. I've talked about him before. I did a story about him where he actually was a pinch runner. And right there, he does not look like much of a pinch runner, even though on the back of that card it says he's 6'3" and 215 pounds. But by the end of his career, he was closer to 315 than he was to 215, guarantee you. But he was a great pitcher, and let me go through some of this stuff. He had a 69.5 WAR, and that's a high WAR, a wins above replacement. He had a record of 214 wins and 191 losses. But he didn't play for a lot of great teams. He had a 3.37 ERA, which is not bad. He struck out over 2,000 batters in his career. He was a three-time in the consideration for the Cy Young. He was a three-time All-Star, and believe it or not, he was a two-time Gold Glove winner. He had a brother, Paul, that also played in the league. But Rick was the ace of the Chicago Cubs when they didn't have some very good teams. And if you don't picture him in your mind, picture Bo Jackson's leadoff home run in the All-Star game because he hit that off of Rick Reuschel. Now, Rick Reuschel, he was a good pitcher, and apparently he was fairly athletic for a big guy that he was because, he did win 3 Gold Glove awards. Now, I think he's kind of forgotten by a lot of people about how good he was. But that's 69.5 WAR is nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty good. And if you kind of compare him to people that's, if you look on Baseball Reference, he's more comparable to Catfish Hunter and Jim Bunning and Mickey Lolich. 2 of them are in the Hall of Fame, and one of them is a pitcher that we talked about that possibility could get in the Hall of Fame. But I keep looking at that 69.5 WAR and think, man, this guy has a chance to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Now, he wasn't on the Hall of Fame ballot very long, But man, I think he's worth taking a look at. You look at it and you tell me, and you decide whether he belongs in the Hall of Fame or not. Second player. I know he's a kind of a forgotten player, but he was a mainstay at third base for the Braves and for the Detroit Tigers, and that is Darrell Evans, the player in the middle right here. Now, Darrell Evans was good. He was a good player, and I think he's really forgotten about. I mean, his WAR is pretty good for a third baseman. It's 58.7. He has over 2,000 hits. He has 2,200 hits. He had 414 home runs, which at one time, 400 was a lot of home runs in baseball. And then he had over 1,000. He had 1,354 RBI. But he only batted 248. But the thing with him is, for a big home run hitter like he was, he walked a lot. He took some pitches. And matter of fact, he struck out 1,400 times in his career, but he walked 1,600 times, which is saying quite a bit. Now the thing is, at third base, when he was in the National League, he was up against some pretty good third basemen. So he only was a two-time All-Star. Didn't get a lot of votes because I just don't think he had that star power. But he was 4 times he was in consideration for the MVP. And, the thing is, I think what is probably will always keep him out of the Hall of Fame is he was not a very agile third baseman and was not very good defensively. But, man, if you compare him to Greg Nettles, who I've talked about should be in the Hall of Fame, if you compare his stats offensively, he compares very well. Matter of fact, he looks like he has better stats than Nettles does. But he led the league in errors 3 different times, and I think he was in the top 10 in errors 7 times or 10 times, a lot. Just let's put it that way. Now, when you do compare him in Baseball Reference, he compares to Greg Nettles, Ron Santo, and Dale Murphy. Now, I don't know if he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but I'm glad we're talking about him because I think he's kind of a forgotten player, and he's pretty dang good. Now, I don't mean to be speeding this along here. These are just easy guys to talk about. Last guy that I'm going to talk about, I go back and forth on him. There's been times I said, this guy's, they ought to consider him for the Hall of Fame, and then I've said out loud that no, I don't think he's close to being a Hall of Famer. But I'm going to show you this Al Oliver card. Now, he's a forgotten player to a lot of people. Matter of fact, I think he was a forgotten player to a lot of people that if he wasn't playing for, people didn't follow him much. And part of that's because played in Pittsburgh, which great organization back in the day, but he also played in Montreal, and he should have won an MVP in 1982 at the age of 35 in Montreal. But he has a 43.6 WAR. That's not so great. But he did have 2,743 hits. He would have stayed on to get more hits. I think he could have hit until he's 50. But his body, I think he had some terrible knees toward the end of his career. He had 219 home runs, which is not a ton, but it's not, again, nothing to sneeze at. But he did have 1,326 RBI, and he batted over 300 at lifetime. He batted 303, which is just short of somebody like George Brett, right? Now, he started out, he's different than like Darrell Evans because he started out hot. He was runner-up Rookie of the Year. He was a 7-time All-Star. He was in consideration for the MVP 10 times. Like I said, in 1982, if you look at his stats in 82, I believe he led the league in average, hits, and RBI. Even I think he batted third in that Montreal order that had Tim Raines and I think Gary Clark, and I think Andre Dawson, and he had a great year that year and should have probably won it. He was a 3-time Silver Slugger winner, and his downfall is he struck out a lot because he swung at a lot of bad pitches, and that's why his on-base percentage isn't quite as high as probably what it should be. But if you look on Baseball Reference, his closest comparison, I just picked out 3 of them, but it's Dave Parker, Enos Slaughter, and Roberto Clemente. All three of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. All 3 of them are good players. Do I think Al Oliver belongs in the Hall of Fame? He hit some of those milestones that make me think he should. But I just want you guys to look up these forgotten players and tell me whether you think they belong in the Hall of Fame. Guys, I love this time of year, but I love doing this. I say it every video when I do just a bit outside. Your comments do not go unnoticed, and I love your intelligence. The people that comment on this and watch this and give me their opinions. You guys put some work into it, and you have a high baseball knowledge, and I really do appreciate that. If I see you at any shows, come up and say hi. We got Strongsville coming up in 2 weeks. I hope your team that you're rooting for has a good start to their year. We'll be talking more about baseball. Now that baseball has started, we'll be talking more about baseball than normal. But guys, remember, this is just a hobby. Collect what you like.